Well, our pets are family. Just ask my guy Marvin.
Yeah, that's right. And keeping them happy and healthy is always a top priority.
Yeah, in fact, Marvin thinks he's the boss. Not just family, but the boss.
He is the boss.
All right, veterinarian Dr. Mike Hutchinson is back to help us make sure our pets are safe and sound this winter. And Dr. Mike, we're going to begin with how we should be taking care of older pets in particular, because they're special, and you really need to be considerate of that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think starting with their joint health, just make sure their mobility is good. And, you know, nice beds for them and maybe some mobility ramps, things to help them get in and out of the car a little bit easier, or maybe up and down the steps a little bit easier. Those kinds of considerations are really good for these pets.
Yeah, around what age should we be considering just taking extra special care of pets as they're aging?
So on the large breed dogs or the giant breed dogs, I would start at 6 or 7, you know, because they age a little bit quicker than the smaller breeds. Mm-hmm. And then the smaller breeds, usually around 10 to 12 is when we'd start considering that. And they do have senior diets that really do help these pets as they get older. They have different antioxidants in it. Mm-hmm. Some of them have joint supplements in them, like glucosamine, chondroitin sulfate. So those are good considerations as well.
All right, let's talk about a topic that I know is a hot topic on your podcast, and it has to do with vaccinations. So tell us about this.
Yeah, so there's core vaccines. Everybody's heard of rabies, distemper, parvo disease, viruses, things like that, but everybody's also heard about over-vaccination, and nobody wants to do it. So there are options. You can get titers, which are antibody measurements in the blood. We do a blood test on the dog or the cat, and we can test to see if they have any antibodies to those vaccines that we have given previously, or maybe they've been infected previously. If they do, we don't have to booster them. If they don't, then we do want to booster them. Now, with rabies, you have to give it, it's the law. So I don't recommend titers on rabies,
right?
But for distemper parvo, I do. And the other core vaccines in Western Pennsylvania for dogs are Lyme disease and leptospirosis. But because those are bacterial diseases, you should give those every year.
Yeah, all right. Now, it's colder outside. Should you feed your pet more or less in the winter months?
That's a great question. So if your pet's outdoors a lot, or if it lives outdoors, you should feed them more. You should fatten them up a little bit, give them more energy to keep them warm. It's the only time you ever hear Dr. Mike talking about fattening up your pet. I'm usually talking about let's get that weight off. But if they're outside, you definitely want to feed them more. If they're indoors, they're going to be less active. So feed them a little bit less, cut them back a little bit, watch that weight. They don't need that winter 10-pound gain each year. So try to cut them back if they're indoor pets. Most of them are. So I usually do recommend cutting them back a little bit because the activity usually decreases.
Yeah, we're trying to cut back with Marvin. He's not real happy about it.
Yeah, I know. If they had something to say about that, they wouldn't like me.
No, they're like, Dr. Mike.
Yeah, right.
No, Marvin loves Dr. Mike. Finally, we want to talk to you about microchipping, because this is so important. And one of my questions about it is, once a pet is microchipped, then do you have to pay something to keep up with a subscription, or is it like a microchip that always works in there?
It always works, and it's a one-time fee. Usually when you get a microchip, it's like the size of a grain of rice. We inject it under the skin, usually between the shoulder blades, and it's permanent. That's why I like it. They can't lose it. So if they get lost at any time in their life, a veterinarian or a shelter can scan them and get a number from that chip and link it to an owner. So the good news is that if you didn't keep up with it and you didn't follow that, keep registering your name, if you moved, it'll go to the veterinarian that administered that chip. And that veterinarian can hopefully find you as well.
Oh, you know what? I always thought it was more or less like a tracker. Like you could track where, like if
a
you're,
GPS.
Yeah, like a GPS
Yeah.
if your animal or your pet got lost. But no, it's just if someone finds your dog or your cat, they can track it back to the owner.
It's an identification number, and there's so many success stories with that. I love those chips. When we get a stray animal that comes in our clinic, the first thing the techs do is they scan it. And if they find a chip, we're all excited because we know we can find the owner. We can reunite that pet. So that's an exciting thing. So I do recommend that people get their pets chipped, cats and dogs. You can chip every animal. Zoo animals get chipped, birds get chipped, but cats and dogs in particular.
All right, Dr. Mike. Well, thank you so much for all of these wonderful tips for our furry friends and your background there. It looks so cozy. Like, I want to join him. Doesn't
I
it look
know,
nice
yeah, we
and
want to go over
warm
to
and-
Dr. Mike's house and
Yeah.
hang out. Yeah, it looks great.
Welcome.
We'll get a fire started. It'll be fun. All right. Thanks, Dr. Mike.
Yes.
Dr. Mike Hutchinson of Animal General in Cranberry. He's a regular PTL contributor. Also look for him on KDK Radio. He also has a podcast. He's everywhere.
He does it all. You think he'll let us in?
Sure. Well, we kind of